Alrighty, everyone, welcome to this special Ender wrap up of the jam. And with me today, I have, I mean, honestly, one of the biggest, probably most influential, graphic designers, in the entire scene. Just honestly, one of the most influential creators in the entire scene, Mr. Johan Nohr of Stockholm Cartel, graphic designer for. God, Merkborg, Symbaroum, Into the Odd, and there's another one I found, Octoberland?
Oh yeah, Oktoberland, Swedish one only.
Yeah,
It's,
I
deep
caught
cut.
that. So what's the story on that? I just saw Russian steampunk role playing game, and I was like, what?
Yeah, it was an older game by the same guy who made White Hack, actually, Christian, who
Okay.
who wrote that a long time ago, and then he wanted to do a remastered version, almost like the way Chris did Into the Odd. So I was, it was published by Free League. I was hired as the artist and graphic designer, and it was this constructivist pseudo Russian thing. It was printed once, never reprinted, so it's really hard to get a hold of now. But it's a fun one. It's a style that I honestly didn't really like at first, but I had to sort of learn to love it. And yeah, now I'm happy with it now, but it's a weird project.
Well, so as I think as the majority of the TTRPG scene, really, kind of knows you for Merkborg, and
Yeah.
I think probably next up in line is probably something like Into the God or Symbaroum, but the thing with, I think the thing that you're so you're, despite being really well known for Merkborg, you're multifaceted. You've got a bunch of different styles that you've either studied or I mean, whatever it was with Into the Odd. I mean, what do you have a main inspiration from the look of that book?
Not really. I mean, we did a mood board, me and Chris, and it was a bunch
Okay.
of these old, sort of I don't know how to describe it, but we wanted it to look like an old book you'd find in an old used bookshop, and it was this, I don't know, magic sigils and these old star maps, whatever you want to call it, but the style itself was, I didn't have one particular influence on it. It was a bunch of stuff, but yeah, no, I'm multifaceted, and I know a lot of people were actually worried when they saw my name attached to Into the Odd, because that's an old, very beloved game, and people were like, "No, they're gonna make fucking Merkborg out of it." So I saw that as a challenge to be I'm gonna show you I can do more than just yellow, black, and splashy. So
Yeah,
yeah, it worked out.
your use of, I mean, I think you're really one of the guys I would say that popularized a lot of the public domain art usage and this I mean, what do you really call this? I mean, collage-esque.
I guess collage, yeah. It's I use it in many different ways. For Into the Odd, it's obviously collage art.
Mhm.
But I mean, I use it for Merkborg all the time, and I tend to take an old medieval wood cutting thing and draw on top of it with my style and just have fun with it. And it's such, I want to show people that it's such a great fucking resource. These museums that have these free libraries of just art that you can use, and there's so much there of every style, and you never, if you go into these museums and you see these libraries of images, you will never want to use AI, for anything. Everything is just there. You just take it and use it, and these old masters drew these for you to use. So yeah.
Well, and I think this is one of the ways in which Merkborg has had a really, really thriving third party scene. Me with my background kind of coming from D&D 5e, I did 3 years of a graphic design degree, and it was always the thing that was really reinforced with layout, I think early on, was everybody wants to make it look like the official books.
Yeah.
And the fact that you guys went with we're gonna, I've always told people Merkborg just vomit style.
That's a good description, actually. Yeah.
There's it's not unapproachable for a third party guy, right?
No.
If you wanted to make something that was just black text on a white page, you literally have pages in here that are so I think you guys are you kind of set your third party guys up to feel like, oh, I could do stuff like
Yeah.
this.
I've heard that. I've heard that several times, and I think it's true because we have such a range of styles in the book, and it's like whatever you do, you can make it look like one spread in the core book. Yeah, you have everything from very detailed artworks and to public domain stuff to very like scribbly. Like the Gutterborn Scum is like it looks like a, I don't know, psychopath creepypasta guy drew it. It was me, but anyway, but you can also just write a text in like black and put it on yellow, and it looks like it's from a quarry. So I hope that it sort of lowered the threshold for people to feel encouraged to do stuff, and not having to be like, oh, I have to be a super professional designer or artist to make it fit into the game. Like there's a level you have to achieve or something. No, I want everyone to be able to just do whatever you want to do and publish it.
Yeah. And like speaking on like Merkborg, I remember a tweet I think you put out a year or two ago, where you were talking about specifically having to like find, what was it, like a special printer in order to get the yellows and inks, or like there was like a weird thing with the pigment. What was the story there?
That was for my art book, actually. Now.
Oh, okay.
Because obviously I have all these images from Merkborg, from Cyborg, and they all use special inks, like they use Pantone inks, and I wanted them to look the same in the art book, so I needed to have 8 color printing, so CMYK plus 4. This is getting real nerdy now, but plus 4 spot colors, and I don't know why, but for some reason, like the supplier of inks couldn't make the ink that we wanted. So like they were out of some of the colors, which is a thing that can happen. Apparently, I didn't know that, and so they had to come up with a new, I guess, recipe for the ink. So yeah, I don't know. They had to like find new. They said new components for the ink because some of the components were like out of stock worldwide for some reason. So yeah, we made new ink for that book. So it's.
Do you know what year this was?
No, this was now. This was
now? Okay.
Earlier this year. So
what do you remember? Was it the pink specifically? Because I think I might know your answer.
I don't know which one it could have been. I mean, yeah.
So like just stupid factoid. I don't know why I know this. There was actually like whenever they were making the Barbie movie, they caused a worldwide shortage.
Oh, you're right.
Pink pigment. Right. Yeah.
I wonder if that's the case. That would be awesome, actually.
I really wonder if the Barbie movie impacted you guys getting that thing out.
I have to ask the printers for that, because that'd be sick, actually, if that was the case. Thanks, Barbie.
Yeah,
I mean,
right.
There were no delays or anything. Like literally nothing happened. It was just like another thing that could affect production that I didn't know about. I think we've had all possible problems and like hiccups that you can have throughout our production, but this was new. This was new for us, so
just we can't make pink. Like...
No, we can't. Yeah, exactly. The ink is out. Okay.
So like, kind of in talking about all that, one of the things I think the challenge that comes with being a layout artist, I think in this medium in particular, is like we're working with mechanical game text, and a lot of that is like our job is kind of in developing not only like the good look for it, but also like how are we conveying this in a sense of where like they're going to apply this, right?
Yeah.
This is a text that if it's in a textbook for school, sure they're learning it and they're whatever, but for this it's like we have to figure out how to convey it mechanically. And I've seen all kinds. Yeah. I've seen a million different approaches now. After I've just poured through TTRPG after TTRPG. But I guess like, are there any like kind of fundamentals, like someone that's new, kind of getting into making TTRPGs or TTRPG content? Were there any like fundamentals that like I guess you could say you wish you had known getting started?
As for design, you mean like graphic design?
Yeah.
And layout. I think, as always, I mean, I'm a big believer in like the graphic design and design in general has to have a goal there has to be a purpose and an intent for the design. Like there is a job that the designer has to do. Usually it's readability and like playability, but it doesn't have to be like that, because like the majority of the Merkborg core book didn't have readability as the main sort of goal. We had other goals like experimentation or pushing boundaries and having fun, stuff like that. Readability was a part of the adventure design, but yeah. So I think figuring out why you're designing and what the purpose is a good step. And also, like, I don't know, just imagine using it at the table. Like, imagine sitting down whilst playing and like, how will this work when I have this book in front of me? Especially for adventures, I feel like, because I've run a lot of games and I've had to sit there and like find the information. I have to flip through the book, go back 20 pages to find the stat block for something, and like that, to me that doesn't work. So I have to, in that case, instead have all the information on one spread and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I feel like try to like put yourself in the position of the GM or the reader. It doesn't have to be the GM, but and try to make the design for whoever is reading it in that particular situation.
So like, I've kind of had this thought as I've been, I've had some of these come in from the jam and everything, where I think there's a real quick want to jump on to making the thing look flashy, pretty.
Yeah.
Before we're really talking about a lot of high utility.
Yeah.
And we had kind of mentioned, you were like, yeah, well, that's the fun part, and it's like, yeah, oh, definitely, I got you. And like where, I guess there's always that kind of fight, I feel like, with appeal and then like, I mean, I guess I would say UI UX in a way.
Yeah.
Accessibility.
Yeah.
So like,
it has,
I guess,
yeah. I don't know. It's like I can't remember who said it, but there's a great quote that I think about from time to time, and it's design without purpose, or if it's design without intent, is decoration. And like decoration is fine, but that's not primarily what you should be doing. I think design should solve a problem. I keep saying this, but it's like it has to work. Like the thing you're designing, it has to make it work better somehow. Yeah. So I mean, it doesn't have to look good. That's fun, but that's not the main sort of job, I think, as a graphic designer.
Right.
So you shouldn't start there necessarily. I think I have to think like I probably break this rule as well, because I think it's so fun to draw skeletons and stuff. So I usually start there, and then I realize, oh, hang on, like no one can use this, so I have to start over. But yeah.
So in talking about that, you had mentioned this a little bit earlier, and I wrote something down for that. So usually whenever I've got a project in front of me, before I even open up an InDesign document and start toying around with fonts or whatever, you had mentioned this, and I was like, good, I'm glad somebody else said the same term, mood boarding.
Oh yeah.
So could you kind of touch on that? Like,
so
what is your
I pretty much always start large projects with that, because when I'm doing like graphic design or even just art direction and someone else is designing it, like I'm doing now with Paint the Town Red for Soul Muppet, I'm doing like creative direction and art direction. Yeah. So I'm not the one designing it, and I'm not doing a lot of art, but I'm helping out with like the surrounding like concept making and the visual look and feel. And
right.
And in that case, you have to, I feel like, start with a mood board, and you have to grab lots of references, and you have to get inspirations and try to find patterns in those images and spreads or whatever you find. And from those patterns, you can sort of get a direction to go in, and you can see quite pretty soon, I feel, when you have a mood board, where it leans and like where it's heading. And so, yeah, I usually start making a mood board. I'm a big Pinterest nerd, so I have tons of Pinterest mood boards for all the projects, and whenever I work with it, I put on, the accompanying music that I have, the playlist that I have for the project, similar thing there, like a musical mood board. And then I look at the Pinterest mood board, and I get into the headspace of that project, and I feel like, okay, these things sort of lead me in the right way where I have to go. So, and it's like you don't have to overthink it as well. You don't have to think about it too much. It's just like it should sort of subconsciously move you in a direction. So
Like,
I feel like that's very good.
There will be those things that just like spark joy, you know.
Yeah. Plus, you know, like if you have a mood board, you can if you do it well, you can like steal and borrow things from these other pieces, or at least solutions to problems. If you can see like, oh, in this annual report, they used these sort of tables. I will use that for my Wandering Monsters table and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So you can find these inspirations in the weirdest places too. I feel like you should not look that much at role-playing games, but look elsewhere as well for it.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
I think the thing that's kind of, I feel like there's a sort of growing movement in I guess I'll call like a liminal fantasy, where there's a lot of these like sort of backroom style, liminal space inspired, like Charles Ferguson Avery with Vast in the Dark, ENnie Allen with Gardens of Yen. I feel like that's an interesting aspect of this, like I guess this youngest culture now, this youngest generation, kind of coming up and having the back rooms kind of explode into like every facet of culture now.
Yeah. There are several games I think called liminal as well, not just one.
Yeah,
that is like literally about just that, and I love it. I'm so fascinated about that whole like mythos as well. I feel like it's tied into like SCP as well. Is that the similar kind of internet-ish? I don't know. Like I feel like such a boomer when I talk about this. Like, that's what the kids are into. Like that sort of like horror stuff.
Yeah, it goes awesome. Back and forth. Like, I mean, there's plenty of times I've seen, like, I mean, I grew up, like, I guess my generation, like, yeah, my early 20s were spent just, like, obsessing over the SCP catalog. I delved through that, and that turned into me, turning into a huge Junji Ito nut, and, it's
a whole stuff.
So, one of the things I'm kind of curious about, so, like, I really think in the scene right now, there's maybe about like 5 or 6 what I would call like bigger sort of like heavy hitter like systems, that are seeing like a lot of mainstay in play. And I think one of the interesting things is that you and correct me if I'm saying his name wrong, Pele Nielsen.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys as like independent creators suddenly came from, I guess Merkborg had kind of built up for. You guys first.
No, but it went fast.
Yeah. And now you guys are like, I would easily call Merkborg in the top 5 probably most popular TTRPGs played in the world right now.
I mean, people play it. It's kind of wild. Like I haven't really caught up to I'm starting to realize now after 5 years that it's actually big, but it all went so fast. So, and we never intended for any of this to be this big. So. We actually, I mean, we were talking about making it just a scene and never, speak of it again and just drop it and do something else. But, it happened, people liked it and we got inspired by that and we kept working on it and we kept like encouraging people to create stuff. And yeah, and now it's like this ball rolling that we can't stop. And, it just crushes everyone underneath it. So it's like, and you just have to roll with it, no pun intended. But yeah.
I mean, you got it's so crazy to see. I mean, it's funny. There was even memes shown I've seen about like, another, Borg hack on Kickstarter or something like that. But it's like, you guys, I've seen like, Nobunaga's Black Castle. I mean, stuff you guys have done with Cyborg. I mean, Frontier Scum. What do you think has given your system this kind of an appeal? What do you think made it catch on like that?
I think part of it is it's very light. It's very light and vague. And it's easy to make hacks for it because you're never afraid that you're going to bump into some obscure rule somewhere because it's so open-ended and it's so like, whatever, anything goes, that mentality to it. And also, I think, I mean, I don't want to like talk too much about my thing here, but I think the visuals help in that it looks easy to do in a way. Like there's a low threshold to create stuff for it because of how chaotic it seems and how like I use public domain art and they're scribbled, the scribbly styles, and it's like it's a low bar of entry to make stuff for it and have it sort of look part of it. So yeah, I feel like that, and we have always been very active in like our Discord and on Twitter and on Facebook and whatever, and encourage people and like hype people up. And I for a long time I backed every Kickstarter I saw for Merkborg because I just want, and then we like shared every post for every Kickstarter on our official accounts and everything. So we do what we can to sort of help people out to do stuff for it. But it's wild, it's not just a game; it's a genre now, which is crazy.
Yeah. I like. Everyone knows what you mean. Borg hack. It's like it. Yeah, it is a. You guys have.
It's like, and this whole like, there's a noun Borg jam, which is like a sarcastic, thing about how a lot of games are just like word and then Borg. And so you can like generate names with this, and you have to make a game for it.
Well, I think one of the, personally for me, I think one of the things that really helped out, and I guess where I can find this segue, right, is like looking at running the Adventures for Merkborg. It's like you guys present not exactly a ton of information, but you convey the idea super quick. I'll pull up like Rot Black Sludge here. So like with Rot Black Sludge, you guys I think kind of set a model here that I'm glad to see is sort of catching on. I think you took it a step further with Into the Odd, where like the room and the room elements are really clean, simple. I mean, each has a different bullet point here, right? And the HUD, that having the overlay like that, I honestly think Borg was the first time I had seen this.
Do you mean with the minimap thing?
Yeah, the minimap.
Yeah. I think we were first. I have to say though, the way that we write the rooms, it's funny that you mentioned Into the Odd, because the first edition of Into the Odd, I think that's where I saw that first. Like really? That way of doing the bullet points. Yeah, so we sort of stole that from Chris, and then I reused that again in the remastered version of Into the Odd as sort of a natural continuation. But it's a nice, like, I know not everyone loves bullet points, but I am a big fan of it. That's how I like to run games, to have like short, flavor heavy and very like terse sentences listed in, at least in Rot Black Sludge, is listed in the order of sort of importance. It's like, or the order you as a player encounters it. So first you have like, are there any light sources in this room? And then you have, is there any movement or any threats? And then it goes like big features, small features, exits. So that's the order you as a GM should read in the description, because that's the sort of natural way people would encounter the room and like take in the room. And plus you start with the whole like vibe, sort of smell, sound thing in the beginning. Right. It just sets the tone.
Like detailing the senses before. So, all right, here's where I guess I could get into some of the like more meta graphic design questions here. So what's your take on read aloud text in rooms?
Don't use it. Don't like it. You should. I like to have words that I could sort of build my own read aloud text from, prompts, if you will. But yeah, so that's what sort of the first vibe sentence is for us. That's the like that's the spark that should ignite your own read aloud text or your own description, I think. Because I feel like with read aloud text. Oh, sorry.
No, sorry.
I mean, I feel like with read aloud text, they're usually good. Maybe maybe a bit long sometimes, but the second the players move into a room that isn't part of this adventure, they will know that it's not part of it, because you don't improvise in the same sort of tone and language as whoever was writing the adventure. And I feel like I have personally the same problem with like using super fancy, nice maps when playing, and you show the players the maps and everything, and so suddenly when they go into a room that you just make up, you don't have that map, and they will, even though they might be nice and not say anything, the players will know that, okay, this wasn't part of the published adventure. Maybe we should go somewhere else. Like, this isn't where we're supposed to be. So that's why if I run an adventure with super nice maps, I will always just draw my own scribbles, or never use it, because I want it to seem sort of natural.
Well, and I think for like this sort of movement where we're typically don't have huge production budgets or whatever. I think expecting that like someone's gonna go to Staples, or I don't know what you guys have over there, and like go print out your full color map, it's just not really happening. No. And no,
but with like VTTs, or if you play online and stuff like that, it's the same thing. If you show the original sort of high res work, and then they go somewhere else, and you're like, oh fuck, I have to.
Yeah.
It's like, damn. Yeah.
Well, and I think even like going with the black and white, like I've run, Merkborg adventures in a VTC, and it's still just like it. I feel like even the black and white kind of complements the. To me, this is just so funny, because to me, I feel like I kind of get what you guys were going for with Merkborg, where I'm like, it's a funny game, like it's over the top, and I think some people will see like the bite of Merkborg, and they're like, this feels like this like get good, like I'm so lethal old school thing, and I'm like, that's hilarious though, like
it is. It's a humorous game. I feel like it looks sort of edgelordy, but we're just having a laugh when we play. I think it's hilarious, and we don't take it seriously. I think maybe that's also part of the reason why it's so easy to, or like encouraging to make stuff for it, because there's a lot of puns and a lot of in jokes and a lot of memes in the whole Borg verse. So and we always take it too far. It's like every meme and every joke will be a product at some point that you can buy and play. It's like, if someone makes a joke, you can know that it will be a released actual title in a week. Like maybe.
Do you have like a favorite like joke that actually made it into the book?
In the book, not that I can think of. I was thinking about third-party stuff now, actually. Stuff like Forkborg and Orkborg and Porkborg and Duckborg, those sort of things that you can buy in print, and I love it. It's and they're really good as well, most of them. So, but in the book, I mean. No, I can't think of anything now. There's probably stuff there that I should remember.
I just thought, like, I saw Hawk as weapon, and that was just immediately like that phrase, because it's like what was the band? Is it Conan?
Conan. Yeah, it's a Conan song.
I saw that, and I was just like, oh my, because number one, it's just a hilarious phrase. Like,
Hawk as weapon.
But
especially when you consider that every natural one your weapon breaks. And I mean, I would definitely rule that as the Hawk just dies when you use it. So of course, it's a weapon. Yeah.
Oh man. So like in this focus of like function practicality, I just realized you guys hyperlinked the mini map on the PDF.
Yeah. You can click. It's like a minigame. You can click your way through there.
What?
Every mention of a different room is a hyperlink as well to that room. So glad you noticed. I don't think anyone has ever said anything about that.
I felt fancy just for figuring out how to do. I mean, without bashing my head against the wall, how to keep consistently doing like, okay, this is the part of the room they're in or whatever. First up, I guess. So whenever you're doing the shading like that, is it just separate Photoshop layers, or are you just actually exporting each individual image?
What do you mean? Like when I do the hyperlink thing? Not
sorry. On the minimap, whenever you're shading a room, is it all one Photoshop file and you're changing the layers in InDesign?
I think at first it was, but then I saved them as separate images because I'm too nervous about having just layers in print files. I want to have separate files just in case something fucks up. But yeah, it's in the beginning it is like that, and then the hyperlinks I just do, I think, in InDesign manually afterwards. No, I love stuff like that, like these small details that you can actually realize when doing Into the Odd Remastered that you can do attachments to PDFs. I didn't know that. But you can attach files in a PDF. So in the Into the Odd Remastered PDF, we have the character sheets as attachments in that PDF. So there's just one file. And when you have that PDF, you get the character sheets as a PDF in the PDF. So I don't know. I want to experiment more with that sort of thing. And
PDF just feels like such it's an incredible file type. I mean, it feels like you've got so much. I mean, not only the print book, but like there's. It really is a super powerful piece of software for turning a document into what does feel like a video game at times. And
I feel like when you do digital stuff, because usually when you have a digital version of a book, you sort of do the book PDF and you just send that. And I feel like that's a waste of potential because you can do much more with digital things. And maybe you shouldn't even though PDF is probably good, maybe you shouldn't do that and just do like an HTML file and do like a web version of it, because you can have like interactive stuff and music and, I don't know, videos and stuff. Like if you're doing a digital release, use digital, powers, or what do you want to call it?
Right.
I know some adventures have. There's called the Citadel Sun King Citadel.
Sunless Citadel.
No, it's by Snow. I think I can't remember the
Scarlet
Palace.
Citadel.
No, it's something else.
No.
Hang on.
Yeah, totally. How many of these Citadel things have you come up with?
This one, the Sun King's Palace. Okay. This is a mega dungeon, and I believe that the digital version is a website with like a clickable map, and there's like you click on one room and you come to a page with just that room description. Like really inspiring stuff, I feel, to what you can do with digital releases. So yeah, Sun King's Palace, can recommend.
So I guess I had this question that I kind of ask anybody that's really in the scene, but like, so number one, like, what's a TTRPG book that everybody should own? As in, like, what, like, is there? I guess as TTRPG enthusiasts, is there a particular book that you're like, this is the one that I feel like had the most impact on me as a hobbyist, I guess is what we'll say.
I think it depends. I mean, to me, that was the old Swedish ones, but I would never recommend anyone buying those. It's Swedish. But you should get. Oh, damn! You put me on the spot here. I'm looking at my bookshelf now to get some ideas. This is great content, by the way. Me staring silently at the bookshelf.
And if there's like...
I know, by the way. You should get Mouse Ritter, that game. Not only is it a brilliant game, but it's designed very efficiently. I feel like they use every spread to their fullest potential, and it's just a great game. So yeah, I would say that.
Is there, and I guess the other portion of that, and I can ask this to you because, you occupy this space, but like, graphic design wise, is there either a TTRPG book that you feel like is, other than, we can say Mouse Ritter, do you feel like there's a book that like graphic designers should pick up in order to just like kind of get a grasp of concepts of design?
There's this one book, it's a small game. It's called Mörkborg. It's very no, on a for real. I don't know, but something that is. I'll have to get back to that. For a second. Totally. Yeah.
So, okay, like, we've it. I've seen how Mark Borg has over years, like had all this talk about layout and the look, the accessibility, inaccessibility, whatever we want to say. And to me, like the first time I ever saw it, because it wasn't laid out like the 5e book, I was just like, "What is happening with this?" And I got it. It clicked for me. Then it was just like, oh, it's just like reading a magazine. Like,
Yeah.
oh, okay, so it's not like everything is particularly going to be structured here, rule. It's more so that there's like, I get, how would you kind of phrase the approach and philosophy to like what you were doing?
Magazine is a good thing because I come from a magazine designing background, and I think like a magazine designer. So every spread is a poster in a way, or every spread is a. I guess when you turn the pages and you flip through the book, you're supposed to sort of feel the book. I don't know. It sounds pretentious, but it's like something new is happening on every spread. It has a momentum and a movement in some way, and you should, I don't know, just flip through the first parts of the book about the setting. Make it, let it make you feel what you want to feel, and then you read it once more to sort of really understand it. But I feel like you should let the sort of visuals shower over you. Whatever will happen. But yeah, just I don't know, feel it.
Right.
Fuck, that's weird, but yeah,
No, yeah, no. I mean, it makes sense.
It's an untraditional book, so you have to sort of do untraditional things with it.
It was like this one, and then I remember the first time I opened up Cult Divinity Lost. I was just
yeah,
whoa, this is okay. There's a vibe happening that I mean, once we're so used to these like dragon game kind of stock fantasy, once you kind of go beyond that, I think a lot of those kinds of games, it's so much more important to kind of sell the like this is why you should tell this kind of a story.
Yeah, I feel like maybe Cultivated Loss is one book that I should recommend to watch for the graphic design, because what Don is doing with the design there is so conceptual as well. Like me, I think he takes the concept of the game and sort of tries to visualize that in the design, in that how in Cult the illusion sort of cracks and you can see through the veil to the Inferno, or what is called Metropolis, the real reality, and there's not one straight line in the whole book. Like everything is slightly crooked, all the columns and everything. The text is, I believe, straight. Like the baselines are still very traditional, very readable, but it's like it's off. There's something wrong everywhere, and that I think accentuates the whole thing with the game and the game setting. Like you can't really put your finger on it at first, but you know that there's something off with the whole world and your understanding of it.
Yeah.
So trying to have the book tell you that, I think, is the key to any graphic designer.
Like
so.
Yeah, there was something I know whenever I got it in, because I mean Helmscast sent me a review copy, and I had watched Seth Korkowski's review of it, and he had shown how on the is it four edge, how if you kind of slightly bend the book back a little bit and it reveals the hidden message. I was like, knowing what I have tried to do for graphic design, for layout, I was just trying to imagine how the hell he would have possibly done that. And I was like, do you think that's a custom printed 4-edge, or is that literally on every single page he made
I know how it is. Yeah, no, I asked him about it, and it's actually manually, I think, made on every page.
Seriously?
Yeah, I think he wrote it out. Maybe he made some sort of script for it, but it's placed right on the edge of every page, and it just moved slightly. I think he calculated the thickness of each page because he picked the paper stock, so he knows the thickness of it. I mean, Don Alexander, who made the design, is the one that inspired me to do graphic design in all role-playing games to begin with, and I always ask him stuff whenever I'm unsure of print details. So he's the master for me, and that sort of thing. I'm not surprised that he did that because, yeah.
I'm trying to show
It's really
chat now
cool.
because we're talking about this, and this is like to me, it's such a huge
See if I can.
accomplishment in layout, and it's kind of hard to like emphasize why it's so cool. Um, hidden.
This one here. See if I can. If
Oh
you can,
yeah.
see if I can show it. Oh yeah, hang on. How will I do this? See, like this is the book, like so, and
Mm.
then when you sort of do like this,
Yeah. Oh,
that
it's
is
so
only the
sick.
beginning. It's so nice.
That is so sick.
Yeah, it's
Like,
awesome.
oh man.
Because like there's one. I guess you can see it in on like the edges of the books up here, where there's some sort of
Yeah.
pattern happening. It's like those are the letters or parts of the letters that are placed there. It's just maths, man. It's crazy.
That's so wild. What's the name of
Yeah.
the person? Dan. It's Dan.
Dan Dan Algstrand, yeah.
Yeah.
Also Stockholm Cartel represent.
A. So, like like Stockholm Cartel, you guys are just a collective. Like, what's the?
Yeah, it's like a group of friends who plays games and complain about games, and then we've decided to make games, and we had used this name before, or it was actually like a derogatory term. People like used to call us Stockholm Cartel because we came into the forums and told everyone how it was, and everyone was like, "Oh, you can't say that because the Stockholm Cartel will come in and set things straight." And so we said, "Yeah, we're Stockholm Cartel. That's who we are." And now we're like, I don't know, with like 13 or 14 people or so, out of which I think 4 or 5 are active, like making stuff. The rest are just regular people, play games and listen to strange music. So yeah, that's who we are. We're involved in a bunch of Swedish stuff, like behind the scenes, where you least expect us.
Oh man. Well, like, so what I figured I could do real quick is kind of like if we were gonna start out a some kind of a document for a whatever kind of product or just thing that we were gonna make. Like I've got an InDesign file I have open, and I was just like, okay, so if we were going to start out in making a like TTRPG product, I'm just gonna like make us a text frame. Um, First thing that you're usually doing whenever you have an InDesign document right in front of you after you set margins, bleed, and everything.
When I'm making a new design or a whole new look for something, like when I start out, or
what do you handle first? Is it like header hierarchies and like that look, or?
I think when I'm done mood boarding and when I have all this pile of books and everything, and I know what I want to do, I think I usually start out very roughly, just placing in text boxes and some elements, and just trying out things that I've seen, like in my mood boards. Actually, for a long time before I go into InDesign, I sort of design. It sounds weird, but I just design in my head. Like I go around thinking about this stuff, and I can see the spread in my mind, and I sort of move things around and be like, I wonder if it'll look like this and this and this. And then once I get to the computer, I can actually try it, like physically. And but then I do a very rough sort of lots of sketches. And then when I feel like I'm kind of happy, I guess I go in to sort of figure out the typography and the baselines and stuff like that. And I have a whole process for that, which takes ages. But it's about finding the right typeface first, and then once I've done that, I try to find the right size and the right leading and the right width for columns, and the letter spacing, the word spacing, and I do multiple like variations of it, like pages with 8 copies of the same text box with slightly different settings, and then I print it out. I look at it, and where my eye immediately goes, like that's the one I want to keep working on, and then I just forget about the rest. So, and that takes a very long time. But once I have the sort of settings for the text columns, or the text paragraphs, then I can start working for real and sort of make the templates or whatever I want. and then colors and stuff. Like there's a lot of work to this, I guess. But
Yeah.
I think typography is the sort of key thing because that determines the grid, that determines the margins. Once you have the width of the column and the number of lines you want to have, which all depends on the leading and the size of the fonts and everything.
Where do you sit on the parchment war?
You mean like if you should have a
parchment or no parchment? Yeah.
I'm not. I mean, I kind of dig it to be honest. If it's done subtly and if it's done with not too much, you can absolutely do too much. And you should be wary about like the borders and too much like burnt edges on the parchments. And if you're gonna do that, please do several versions of it, so not the same background for every page. You will notice that.
I've seen this same crease like 20 times now so far.
Yeah. I mean, I do this kind of stuff. I have the background, like the gritty backgrounds, but I will do several versions. I will have like 10 different background files and turn them upside down and flip them, so that, because the worst thing for me is when I flip through a book and I see the same sort of damaged thing. Yeah. I was like, that's just lazy. Come on, like you just flip it vertically.
Yeah, I typically don't really mind the quote unquote like saying. I mean, I knew whenever I was a kid and I was seeing that like similar things were repeated even in like, oh, what was it? First time I saw it was actually in old Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
Oh, really?
Where like Scooby-Doo would just like loop the same exact background for like 1 foot of animation and it would just keep continuing. And then I started picking it up in books where I was like, seeing, oh, well, wait, there's like they've just been using the same asset right here over and whatever. And then in some of these TTRPG books, I did catch on where it was like, oh, this is the exact same image, just over 200 pages.
But I mean, it has to be said that I don't think you should stress too much about it because in the whole space, there's like 10 people who cares about this. It's like me and some other graphic designers. Like, you don't listen to us too much. Like, don't worry about it, for real. So also when you do like science fiction stuff, if you have a lot of like cut corners and the diagonal corners, which is to science fiction what parchments is to fantasy, like that's fine. You can do that too.
So like whenever you're settling on your typefaces, right? I mean, I remember I'm trying to remember who did the article, but they were talking about how essentially it's all coming down to your header, whatever header font you've got. Typically, people are using a serif font for their body text, and then sans serif for tables and whatnot. But whenever you're getting to like this step, I guess, so you had the process of what sounds like just molding things from clay and then throwing away half the clay and then remolding and whatnot. So I guess, do you have anything in particular that you're like always looking out for in a good, like, let's say body text font?
Okay, so I have a few things, and it depends on the project, but if it's going to be in several languages, I have to know that it has support for all those stuff. Like, that's a thing. If I'm doing Swedish stuff, it has to have our stupid letters that we have. And it has to be like, because some of the typefaces you can tell that it's not a Scandinavian person who did it, because the balance will be all weird. And no one will care except like Swedes and Norwegians and Danes, possibly. But we will see, and we will be like, okay, this is not a real O or A or all those letters. But that's the thing, and it's also like if you ever plan down the line of translating this into other languages with other alphabets, then if the typeface has support for that, that's great. Otherwise, you'd have to find a similar one with different glyphs, but.
Yeah.
That I also look for the kerning in the typeface, like what the word spacing looks like. If I have to do a lot of manual stuff, I think some of the stranger sort of display typefaces that you use for headlines, they have very very like large spacings between the words. So you have to like manually push it or you have to set it up. But that's not something you can do for like body text because it will be too much work, I feel. So
Yeah.
It has to have great kern tables. And what else? I don't know. Like just readability if it's for a body text, that's super important. That's plus it doesn't hurt to check who did it and make sure that they're not an asshole. So that you don't use like Gil Sans or something like that. But there's usually
So-
typeface makers are pretty decent people, but not all the time.
So like looking for your language support, kerning, readability,
Yeah.
looking into who did it. I like whenever I'm like kind of trying to like figure out a vibe for one, and like how that communicates the idea of like what this game is like. What do you? So I mean, Merkborg, you're kind of swapping all over the place, but like looking at like into the odd, there is consistency. By the way, I just got to give you credit for like actually using Comic Sans and Papyrus in in Merkborg.
Yeah, that was a goal for me.
I didn't catch it the first time I was reading through, and then someone pointed out like there was a zip doc that had all the different fonts that were in Merkborg. And whenever I saw Comic Sans, I was like, "This motherfucker!"
Yeah, redemption for Comic Sans. It's such a, I'm Team Comic Sans here. It has its use. Stop bullying Comic Sans. Come on. Actually, there's one page where I combine Papyrus and Comic Sans into one mega typeface. So I write the same number. It's like a number list, and I write the same number in both typefaces and put them on top of each other, and it becomes the ultimate typeface. So that's and that was just as like a gag that I did that. But yeah, it turns out you can win design awards with Comic Sans anyway.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, obviously, vibe and tone and everything is super important for typefaces. I should have mentioned that first. It was like when I did what was that typeface called? Oh yeah, when I did Electric State, the design for that game, which is about this road trip essentially through sort of post-apocalyptic 90s America. And choosing the typefaces for that, I did choose like very 90s typefaces, but also it's called Interstate, I think it is, for the headlines. And that's the typeface used for the road signs in the US. Because it made so much sense, because it's a road trip in the United States, and it's like I knew that immediately when I started working on it. Like I have to use that typeface, and I did a lot of googling and like research into like what exactly was the typeface for the road signs, and can I somehow get a hold of it? And I think Interstate was the closest that was actually commercially available for it. So it's like things like that. Like I think typography can convey so much setting as well. And tone, of course.
I'm so stoked to hear that you're doing the graphic design on that, because like ever since because I love Tales from the Loop. I love it, the series in particular was like wow, shockingly well done. And then I got the book, and whenever I was telling one of my playgroups about it, they were like, "Yeah, but we got to play as kids," and I was like, "Well, like." Like that. It's part of the kids on bikes kind of vibe, and they weren't really sold on it. But whenever I saw that they were doing Electric State, I was like, all right. I again kind of that like liminal sort of dead world fantasy,
very much.
Very
much a liminal space, because you're on the move constantly. You're transferring from one state to another, or like one place to another.
Yeah.
There's like stops every now and then with encounters, and you have your car, and there's this weird drone things, and yeah, it's a very cool setting.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that too.
Do you know of any ways that you could like? I think the people who aren't really used to, looking at a font for a vibe. It's really clear in some of them where we see like, okay, this one's more distorted, grungy. This one's meant for a thrash metal band. What like I guess whenever you're looking at a font face for like, I guess vibe and tone, is there something in particular that conveys like fantasy or like dungeon crawler to you?
Oh, depends on what kind of fantasy. I think you could go with like the medieval black letter fonts for one vibe, or like the called minuscule in Swedish. It's like the very old sort of. I think it's called minuscule maybe. That very old Celtic-ish, I guess,
Mhm.
typefaces with a sort of rounded. Like that's one way. Or just go with whatever like old school fantasy products used. So like I think the oldest Dungeons and Dragons wasn't that like Futura or something? It's like something completely non-medieval, but it has a very like old. I don't know. It probably wasn't Futura, but it was something like that.
Some of them were using it was a geometric font like that.
Yeah.
There was Futura, and they were using that and Souvenir.
Oh yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, it was Futura Souvenir, and then there was like one that made it look like a Cracker Barrel, like a Golden Corral style, like hokey Western font. I don't remember what this font. This one.
Oh yeah, that one.
Whatever
Yeah,
this
but
one
that
is. Yeah,
yeah.
looks like a
That's so
circus.
that's so
Yeah,
so much Dungeons and Dragons. But I feel like the for the headlines, I think it's Futura and Souvenir, what you mentioned. Like that has a certain vibe as well. Like it looks like old tape cassettes from like Dungeons and stuff, and it's more old school than fantasy. Come to think of it, but if to me that speaks fantasy too, because you have those books in the back of your mind when you see those typefaces.
yeah,
So I don't know. It's just like I guess I consume a lot of graphic design and typography, so I have very like a preconceived, like a very strong ideas of how I think about typography. But I don't know. It doesn't. If you find a nice font, like it doesn't hurt to read up about it. Like why is it made? What's it for? Usually the foundries and the places where you buy typefaces, they will have these like preview images that sets a mood, and they have like
yeah.
a sort of thing. So yeah, like just let that inspire you, and also don't worry about it too much. Like you can use sci-fi fonts for fantasy. Like it's there are no rules for it.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess kind of hitting on the Parchment War thing from earlier. I mean, for me, my whole thing with that has been there's such a huge focus on accessibility here.
Yeah,
I know for sure, and like I've seen where even still people are like, just completely remove any sense of background and only really be using your margins for things like making sure tabs, or like coloring, like what you guys did on Into the Odd, where you can see what different section of the book
yeah,
you're in based off of the color border and things. Um, and yeah, I start to honestly think that some of this fantasy stuff, the black letter, I know I've gotten a little bit of pushback as to what I was using on Vagabond because the F has another,
yeah,
like an additional little flag at the top.
yeah.
Um,
Some of them are really
but
hard to read. Like some of the S's where you got the long S and that sort of thing. So
yeah,
yeah,
I like black letter, but I think the fractor kind of movement, or I guess is and despite it looking like kind of cool fantasy, it's still it does have some readability issues.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
Sure. And you have to find the black letter fonts that work that you can read, especially if you plan on. Yeah, and also like write out the thing that you want to write out, and like, can you read it? Yes, then good. But sometimes I feel like people forget about that part where you have to sort of test read it yourself. So like,
right.
don't just put like add a font to a thing and then move on. Like, actually look at it and think for a second.
Yeah,
Can I read this? Because I've seen books with like whole paragraphs in like fracture font, and it's like, yeah, it looks cool, but it's kind of hard to read. And
yeah,
it is important for it to be accessible and readable. Like I know Merkborg gets a lot of flack for it. I personally don't think it's that unreadable. Plus, we have the bare bones edition that's super legible, but
right.
it is very important that it is usable as well to some degree.
Yeah, I don't think that you guys necessarily have an accessibility issue with Merkborg. It's more so that it's just unconventional.
Yeah,
Um, and I think once people kind of understand what you're going for there with like I've heard people say like, "Oh, the game is supposed to be like really like in your face," and I'm
yeah,
like, I I guess, but it's still there. Like I have seen games that are like infinitely more incomprehensible than Merkborg's book, and I'm like, I think that it's not necessarily an accessibility issue. It's just kind of an understanding. Like it's not going to be the two column kind of layout like you're
No.
used to seeing,
I think
right?
maybe that's why like it's everyone is not used to this kind of layout because the text itself in Merkborg is usually pretty structured and traditional. Like we use, yeah, it's not that strange. The actual paragraphs, it's I mean, of course, the headlines are a bit all over the place sometimes, but yeah, I guess we follow more rules than we intended to in the
Yeah.
book. So
Um, so as far as I guess all this goes with the layout. Whenever you are, uh, it's with I know the body text is like the most important, but for some reason I feel like headers, headings, whatever it's going to be, are the ones that really sell the identity of the project.
yeah,
Um, how are you like? I guess so. Whenever you're picking out a header heading, um, I've seen so many people that it seems like they go, oh, okay, well, this is for like a post-apocalyptic thing, and then they go like Detroit Broken or something that just looks
yeah,
crazy, distorted, and grungy.
yeah.
Um,
Good font
and
though. Shout out.
it's cool.
Yeah,
I think mostly as a, cool as a, what would you call this? I've seen it used where it just sort of like floods the page in a way
yeah.
and more of the page is just that font in a really brick, like blocky kind of a feel. Um,
I feel
but
like with. Oh, sorry.
oh no,
I was.
you're good.
No, I'm just thinking about. I think for headlines, to me, I look at them almost as illustrations in a way, in that they are more like shapes than letters. Like the body text and the sort of side boxes and the stat blocks, they are to me text, but headers are more images. And I want them to have their place in the layout, and I want to check how they're balanced with the rest of the spread and like I don't know, especially with a thing like Merkborg that's a bit more dynamic in the layout. I sort of move the images and place them as I would a art piece or like an illustration more. So yeah, I think I'll put more work into the headlines and the titles because of that, and especially when I pick the typefaces for that, because it depends on what's also on the page and how it sort of works together with that. But yeah, I mean, those typefaces really sell the setting and the tone. And I remember when I worked magazines, we used to talk about like, oh, every magazine and every design should have three typefaces, uh, one body text, one fact text, and one headline text. And the first two are like the bread and butter, like the potato and the meat. And then the headline font, that's the spice, like that's the flavor of it. And
Hmm.
I still think like that. Like the first two, the actual for the longer paragraphs, those should be readable, sensible, sort of traditional. They can be, but the headlines, that's where you can sort of really go crazy and sell the flavor of the thing you're
Yeah,
doing. Because you don't use it as often, you use it sparingly, but when you do use it, it makes an impact, sort of.
yeah.
So yeah.
I guess another question I got is like, so why is Allegria the best font for dungeons ever? Like ever.
It just works. It's
Why
so
is it
versatile.
so good?
I
I love this font.
Yeah, no, me too. It's well balanced. It has a very even contrast to the letters. I don't know, it's good. Like the small caps, excellent. Good difference between light, medium, regular, and bold. Like Allegria, Team Allegria, go forever.
I,
I will never
yeah,
get tired of that. I can literally just use Allegria for the rest of my life, and I'll be fine.
it's
So
so good. I'm
yeah,
like, and I don't know why specifically for like TTRPG stuff. Like
I
it
don't know.
feels like it does get that like, I, whatever. But I guess maybe just because that's the place where I'm flooded with it the most. But yeah,
Yeah, I don't mind it. It's same with like the I am fell thing, the fell
yes,
typefaces. Like I never get tired of them. I know it's like some people do say like, oh, I see them everywhere. Like I don't care. I dig it. I think it's great. If
yeah,
it works, I mean, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Same with like I can go with Helvetica forever and ever. So when in doubt, Allegria, Fell, or Helvetica. Like can't go wrong.
oh, that's awesome. Okay, so let me see here. I had a couple questions from the people that were participating in the jam that I
Cool.
was going to throw your way. Get this pulled up. Now, all right. So this one's from Fifi, who asks, in a layout as artistic as Merkborg's, how do you stay focused on a productive workflow rather than getting lost in all the artistic details? I struggle with this a lot and tend to put too much focus on the art before the content is finished.
Good question. I think the simple answer is I don't stay focused on it. I think Merkborg was made. It was very fast. Like we made the whole thing. I think I made the layout and the design in like 2 or 3 months tops for the whole book, and it was just in a sort of manic state. I think to both me and Pelle when we made that book, and it was, I don't know. We came into this very sought after state of flow where we just, the work we made inspired us, and I think I just followed along and I let it, I let myself get lost into whatever I was doing, and I didn't worry too much about it. But now when I'm on more of a schedule, sometimes I have a deadline and I have, commissions, you just sort of have to let it go at some point. Like you have to be finished and just move on and don't worry too much about it. If that answered, I'm not sure, but it's like,
yeah,
it's like, you want to stay working on something and you want to focus on the art, but you just have to draw the line somewhere and just leave it. And you will,
perfect as the enemy had done.
100%, yes, and you will like it. I mean, even though you may not feel like it at the moment, like you're not done, like give it 2-3 months and you will like it regardless. So I struggle with that a lot, actually. I tend to spend way too much time on the art that I do, and I know that even if I stop now and I don't keep working on this illustration for 2 more weeks, like I will be happy with it eventually. Like it's just I have to tell myself that while working. But it's easy.
I like the approach of give myself enough time to be my own fan, where like I can finally come back and look at it after 2 months or whatever. Like I know after I wrap up Vagabond, the last thing I want to do is look at TTRPG stuff for like a solid month, where I'm like
totally.
working 10+ hour days. I'm like I'm gonna take a vacation and like just get I spent 25 years as a guitar player, and this last year like that's been neglected. So I'm like, I need to go out and play a couple gigs, kind of get my mind off that, and just go somewhere that isn't this goblin cave I've been living in. But it kind of rips off of something that we were talking about, like we should save for this. To everybody who's ever given me hell for this on a stream, we were talking about how like doing layout and design at the exact same time. And you told me that you do your layout while you're doing game design or you're writing at the same time.
Yeah. I'm guilty as charged. I write it in design, hell yeah. Because it's, to me, it's the same process. Like I don't see. To me, it's like text isn't separate from the design. It's the same thing. Like you do in one thing. Same with art. I will write the text. I will, take a screen cap of this page or the spread with like holes in it, and I will paste that into Photoshop and draw on top of the thing and like go back and forth. And I don't know. My editors probably hate me for it, but I will send them fully laid out spreads for proofreading and editing. And it's a thing, and they know that's how I work. And because like I don't know, especially when you work with editors, like if you. Which you should do, by the way, everyone. You should work with editors and proofreaders. But when you send them a text file and they proofread it and edit it and you get it back, you will still want to do some changes to it when you put it into the design. So it's better, I feel like, to do that first and be like this is how I want it to be. This is the width of the column. This is where it has to stop, and then do the editing later.
Yeah.
But it's worked for us, but
I've done a couple of those collabs where like everybody else wants to work in, Google Docs, and I'm like, that's great and all, but like this is just for me actually like seeing how the words are laying out for some reason
Yeah.
inspires me to work more.
Yeah, same here. Same here.
It,
For real.
it's like it's just seeing it as a full product or something. I don't know.
Yeah. With that said, we do have Google Docs documents with the text, but I will always place it into the InDesign, change it and re-edit it and rewrite stuff, and then like show the writers what I want to do, and so the version that's in Google Docs is not really updated. Like as soon as I get my hands on it, because I do editing as well. Maybe I shouldn't, but I do. Because I will, and I won't stop doing it. If I'm laying something out and I see things I want to change and I want to like improve, in my opinion, then I will suggest edits and improvements. Because to me, that's the same job. Like that's one job.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Well, on the next one, Grego Movie Rants asks, how do you best achieve balance between visual design and game rules / content? How does the approach to a rules-light game like Merkborg compare to more complex games? And I guess this is kind of like a 2 or 3-parter here. So just starting out, I guess, with that first block, how do you best achieve balance between visual design and game rules / content?
So it comes back to, I think, the idea that all design should have a purpose, because some of the how do I phrase this? I think the design has to help with understanding the rules in a way. And like some of the pages in Merkborg, for example, you have the page with the heart on it for hit points. Like that to me helps me understand that this is about health, this is about damage, this is about brutally, that it's a very bloody picture of a heart, and it's like, okay, I get it. I get what world we're in now. We're in, health rules and damage rules. And so that it's sort of the same thing. And it's also with like the table for weapons, which is like 4 pages. And it starts off with this joke with the femur bone. And then you have like a big table with the guy. And then as you get into the heavier stuff, it sort of escalates and you get bigger and bigger pictures of the weapons. And that also sort of emphasizes the scale of the weapons in a way. So I guess, yeah, I look at it's one thing, game rules and graphic design, and it should strengthen each other, kind of.
Yeah.
It's
I mean, having the sense of humor with it is just like, just giant femur. What was like, what was the gag there? Just like like this is supposed to be the not great weapon, or is it
it's just a shit weapon? It's like this is a world where you fight with people's femur bones. Like that's the kind of thing that you have laying around. It's not like a dagger. It's like it wouldn't work in any game, but here it's not a strange thing to have like a bone as a weapon. Plus because of the way that the critical failure rules work, and so when you get a natural 1, your weapon breaks and you have to find a new weapon. And in the equipment list it says that any item here deals D4 damage. So, which is the same as a dagger or a femur bone, I think. So the idea is that in this world you are desperate enough to fight with whatever is at hand. So because your weapon breaks so often because everything is terrible, then you will just grab a femur bone, or you will grab a bottle or a wooden, a table leg or something. And that's the kind of tone we want to set with also the rules, the desperation and the sort of tavern brawl-esque situation. So yeah, that's the thing, I think.
Do you think there's a page in here that, in particular, where maybe I guess the game text had to better serve the page than the visual side of it? Is there anything that comes to mind in particular?
Yeah, I think the rules for the abilities. So this one here. That I actually thought were so important that you had to understand, so I put them on a literal piece of paper, like a rules book. So it's like this has to be crystal clear and super easy to read. So Plus, the last spread, the end papers with the index and the rules summary, like that spread is also like purely functioning, like
Clean
functional.
function.
Yeah. This is like you shouldn't have to flip through the book to any other page, but this is what you should have open when you play the game. You can flip through the book, but when you're on your off hours, on your leisure time, but not at the table. Leave the book alone. Just flip it open, leave it be. So
yeah, I think one of the other things that kind of catches me about the abilities one is before then most of the art is either the kind of wood carvings or black and white, kind of very ink heavy. Every once in a while the like wood graving stock art, and then suddenly you get this
it's blue,
blue lush painting, and it's like that almost emphasizes like this is important information. Like stop here, wait.
No, and it was such a great image. I think that painting that was just shouted anxiety and desperation and agony and everything, and just like the end of all things. So plus as you said, the color, like it stands out. So
in this otherwise yellow, pink, black and white book
like this thing is a different thing.
Right.
And this is also a fun thing because we've had people say like, "Oh, I can't read this. Like, it's impossible to read." It's like, that's the point. Like, this is about not being able to read Magic Scrolls and what happens when you misread it. That's why it's an unreadable headline. So it's also like the way typography emphasizes what the rules are about. So
well, and this is also like. I just immediately made me think of that. You've checked out Bastards, right, Micah? I think it's Micah Anderson.
Yeah, a bit. Yeah, I haven't read it, but I've seen it.
Yeah, I mean, just like it's clean. There is like extremely simple, like streamlined. I mean, this like Arcane Catastrophes feels like the kind of font choices they tend to make over there. So the other portion of that question was, how does the approach to a rules-light game like Merkborg compare to more complex games, and how do you believe that impacts the visual design process?
So for starter, I mean, it's very clear actually. There's a lot more text in crunchier games. So, like, Electric State isn't very crunchy, but it's a lot more rules than it is in Merkborg. So I have to think differently about the design of that. I can't have as large margins because I want the every section of one thing or one rule, I want to have a one spread. So obviously I have to have like smaller margins for that to work. And you just have to think of like, I think the reader for very rules-light games are in a different state of mind than the readers for rules-heavy games. Like it's a different sort of mindset or a different situation when it's read, I feel like. Merkborg is more of a beer and pretzels type game. Like you don't have to think too much about when running it. Whilst more rules-heavy games, maybe you have to, spend some more time on it. And so you can approach that differently in the layout as well. And you can, you can be a bit wordier and a bit more traditional maybe, because people won't mind reading longer texts for crunchier games.
Well, I think you actually like emphasize, in talking about like more rules-like games. I mean, what you did on Into the Odd, I think even the visual design of just like text on page really communicates actually a lot of the rules-light sort of nature of the game. I swear you can start reading Into the Odd and finish the book within like 15 minutes. Like it's a lightning fast read.
And we can afford very large margins in that book too, because there's not much text and like all the information. If you want to have one sort of set of information on one spread, like there's not a lot of text, so we can have very spacious layouts too, which is nice. Yeah. I feel like you don't usually get to have that much white space, and I really appreciate when you can have the opportunity to do that.
Oh, I know. Okay, this came up the other day, and I knew I had to ask you this while I had the chance to talk to you here. Okay, so the map process that you had on making the maps for like Iron Coral, because you did these, right?
Yeah. That was mine.
What's the I guess what's the overall medium here? Because it's like it's definitely collage of like
It's collage, yeah. It's I think it's all public domain images that too. I think I found sort of old pages of like from old books, and I took snippets on them and made these sort of post-it notes that I placed on the map on the background that I wanted to it should look like kind of the wall material, but also say something about the tone of the place. So like there's one level that's all about like golden things, so that's a bit gold tinted and yeah, because the book is supposed to feel like an adventurer sort of journal kind of. I wanted the maps to feel like what's it called, scrapbook
yeah,
in a
yeah,
way.
yeah.
Yeah. Like someone took these notes and posted them in the pasted them in the order of the rooms and made like scribbly notes, kind of showing what's in the rooms. But that's not really important that you can see what the illustrations are in the rooms. It just gives a hint of it's something that maybe looks like this thing, but yeah, at a quick glance, maybe if you read the text, then you might understand what they are, but they don't. Yeah, they don't have a very important job of like telling you this is in this room.
Yeah. Because
Yeah.
I have been, I mean, falling more and more in love with like just essentially give me a shape and a
Yeah.
general direction for where that room is. Like
Yeah.
I don't, I don't. It's odd. The more and more I get away from like so specifically D&D, the less and less I really think that the tactics of like a grid really
Yeah.
matter.
I
Because
mean, if you don't use it, then you don't need it in the map, I feel.
yeah,
Yeah.
it,
It's like when you sit down and play, like how do you usually describe rooms and how they relate to each other? Like you don't always say the exact measurements of the room.
yeah,
You just say like, oh, there's a door leading that way, and it looks and sounds like this, and then there's a door in that way, and that's all you need to show on the map as well. Like it's like a schematic almost.
right.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, because that's been an interesting one that people have been like, well, wait, I don't really know. What do I need to turn in for a map? And I'm like, if it's just a point crawl and you just get me
Yeah.
like a flow chart for your adventure, sick.
Totally. Yeah, that
Please.
works. That works. Just have the room as a box and maybe put a word in it or so.
Yeah.
And just show, and then how it relates to the other rooms. I actually like adventures where you have actual writings on the map. It's like you just have like a dashboard kind of,
Yeah.
where it's like if it's a small dungeon. Like I've done a few of these, and it's like I really like running those because it's like, okay, I'm looking at the map, I'm looking at this room where we're in, and oh, that's also where the text for this room is in the map. So to me, that makes it very easy to run because I don't have to move my eyes. I just have to look at one place, and that's where it is.
Talking about that, so like Bloat, you were doing the graphic design on that one, right?
Yeah. That's one of those. That's a typical example of that, where you have the map and you have the text near the room and everything. So yeah.
Is there any kind of like, I mean, in doing those one-page dungeons, or like you have everything condensed on one page,
Yeah.
I mean, are there any general guidelines on that? Because I know I've seen a few people have taken a shot at it, but it sort of felt as if, some people have like the idea of what this should be, and they kind of follow the rough, but it doesn't seem like they really. It seems like people are having kind of a rough time executing on it. At least to the point of seeing what you guys did with like Bloat, where it's just like that is it feels like a cohesive single image, and it feels like kind of everything else has been a bit like text boxes on top of an illustration, right?
You know what? I think it's because we got the text from that, and because otherwise, when I do this kind of thing, I will write in layout because, especially in these things, I will do like a very quick rough shape of the map, and then I will write in the text boxes where I want it to be, and then I will draw the final map. But for this, we got the text, I placed them on the page and made a rough map around the text boxes to, adjust it to their length. So the room sizes and exactly where they were depended on the text length, and the text had to, was able to decide that. So because it's not like we were saying, it's not important the exact length of the corridors or the exact measurements of the rooms, as long as they're in the same order and the same relation to each other. So I made the layout without the map, and then I rewrote some of the words, I think, or edited some of it to make it smaller and shorter, and then I drew the map on top of it. So I guess it's just an order of how you execute it, like what thing you do first, in that sense.
So that was actually text first, and then map came after.
It was, yeah. So
okay,
yeah, we had a map first, but I just took the order of the rooms and made my version of it and changed it depending on the text box's size. For that,
that's super interesting. Okay,
so, yeah.
So yeah,
that's why it feels like One Piece, because it is made that way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I assume that you guys had the map first and then just fit the text around it, because that makes sense to me. But no, that's actually cool in letting the text essentially kind of guide where some of the rooms might fit better. Yeah, and it does. It's more organic.
Yeah, so I think, for instance, I lengthened some of the corridors quite a bit because I had to move across the gutter, and things like that. Just be flexible with it.
Huh. That is okay. That's super. I mean, I'm geeking out over. Yeah,
that's fun. That's fun.
Yeah.
Because I want to have, I love the one-page dungeons, and I want to have as much information on one spread as possible. Like the same with Rot Like Sludge. Like, even though it's a longer adventure, I want everything essential to be in one spread. And I just hate turning pages. I just never want to touch the book when I'm running a game.
Yeah.
Because then I get distracted from the players and the game. I don't want to touch the book. Ew.
Yeah, I've got I have my my GM screen that I would love to just set something up and feel like I've got my dashboard right there, and I don't have to flip through this book over here to find this whatever. And that's honestly the big strength of these kinds of systems, where it's so funny how in the system neutral movement there's or I guess this sort of VX or I mean, people called it OSR, NSR, a million, but it's whatever this thing is. That's just, it's I just think it's basic expert derivative, and everybody could, I don't know, easily convert one thing that they wrote for this game into another thing. I feel like there's so much more weird boundary pushing and experimenting with just the ideas of what these could be, I
think it's we don't hold as much things sacred here, or at least I don't. I mean, I have no nostalgia to old D&D. I don't care about how D&D or these sort of role playing games should be and I feel like that's a good thing, probably. And I feel like definitely I agree. This is where a lot of the really good innovation is. And I get really inspired by just being around all these creators who make these things.
Yeah.
It's really cool stuff.
So the next one we got up, Clip Ice. Or what? You told me how to pronounce this the other day. Clips. It was Clipsy. That's right. Or Clips, something like that. Anyway, so as a beginner, what are quick and simple things I can do to elevate my layout?
Ooh.
Looking for a fast fix.
Fast fix, yeah, no, but I mean, I just imitate. I feel study a lot of other work and just try to figure out what it is that makes it look good to you, and just steal in a morally defendable way. I don't know. I think that's it. It's terrible advice, but I guess just study and copy people.
I mean, emulation. That's like I don't know of a single creative that didn't have an inspiration, right? Like, I mean,
No, I've stolen a lot of the ideas and stuff. That's how you do. Like you copy people that you were inspired by, and when you're copying that, it will turn into a new thing because you have your own signature style and you have your own understanding and thing. So
yeah,
definitely.
it's like this is why it always kind of catches me off guard whenever there is plagiarism, and I'm just like, you had to really.
That's not what I mean. That's not what I
No,
mean.
no. Yeah.
No.
It's funny to me because like I'm always like, you had to really try to do that, you know? Like,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
like, but yeah, like there's not imitation, flattery, whatnot. Yeah, there's an intent of malice that most creatives, honestly, if you're wanting to get better at this, you typically know where the line stops because you usually care. Yeah.
Everything is a remix of everything. That's really how it is. I feel so. Yeah, nothing is new.
Okay, so we got 3 more. What advice do you wish someone would have given you starting as a TTRPG designer?
Let's see. What advice? Double check your print files before sending it to print. If a book, if you change the number of pages on a book, make sure you also change the layout for your very centered spine of the book. You know, everything. If a measurement is changed, then you have to adapt the layout for that. Because I've done some stuff that are very crooked and off-centered because technical thing happened, and just be careful with your print files. I know people worry a lot about print files, and I just say keep worrying. Just worry more.
Paranoia. And it's
totally. Yeah.
There's the roles of like production managers whenever you send something out to somebody, and it's like their job is typically to be that like last line of defense before they send it off, and they pay what $500+ for a mock-up or proof. That's double check, paranoia, triple check.
100%. And also, when you've sent something to print, it's never too late to just send a new file and tell the printers, "Hey, I fucked up. There's a small mistake here. Take this file instead." They will do it for you.
From there, Nerdine asked, "Seeing as most of the information that comes in this medium has to be taught to the readers, and their previous experiences don't serve them to interpret or intuit the meaning behind the concepts you're trying to teach, how do you balance the cognitive load you're adding with new, I think this is compressed information, such as icons, with the readability and ease of use to add to enfranchised readers?" So I think that's like if they're experienced with other games and then they see yours and see that there's like maybe tweaks that are made to information they've otherwise have already seen in a way. This would be like in Merkborg, right, where like you guys aren't listing read aloud text like what people are seeing in 5e. You're labeling different elements, right? So I guess it's
think we never really didn't worry too much about that. We never really thought about what previous like experiences people would have. We assumed that if you pick this game up, because we never thought it would be as big as it is. We thought only like the nerds within the OSR would pick this up, and they will know what OSR games are like, and like they will get it. And so we never explained any of it. Like we never explained what a role-playing game is or what this type of game is like, and we just felt, oh, you will get it. Like you wouldn't buy this if you didn't. So, and I still feel like I really believe in the reader, and I feel like they will figure it out, and there will hopefully maybe be someone else in the playing group that has played role-playing games before and understand this thing. And I don't know. You should maybe you should explain like completely new stuff better, but the core concepts of what like a game is and how you run it, I feel like people are very capable already to understand if they're into this sort of thing.
Yeah, I feel like way early on, maybe with D&D in like, 70s, 80s or
Yeah.
whatever. Yeah, sure, consistent like refreshing of like or yeah, this is what a role-playing game is. But
Yeah.
role-playing games were not as like I mean, this was before, Legend of Zelda or like
Yeah.
Skyrim or what Final Fantasy. So like at this point if you say RPG, I think 99% of the gaming populace knows what that means at this
Yeah.
point.
Yeah.
Um
I feel like we as a medium should be confident enough to like think people know what this is, because you never see board games explain what a board game is. They explain what is this game, and I think maybe you should do that in your role playing game. Like, what is this game? What is it about? How do you play it? But not like, you never see in a movie. What's a movie? Like, no, you like just you assume that the receiver will know that, and I feel like we should be confident enough to think that too of role playing games now.
Should I use my eyes on this thing or what?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, admittedly, it's a weird kind of medium, but unless you're making games, I feel like for explicitly for beginners, then you don't really have to explain what it is too much.
Uh, the Kraken 777. Oh, I can already tell you. We talked about this second, but he asked if you've looked over my game. This dude's super busy, by the way. I think we had talked about Vagabond at one point, but more so just like I'm so stoked to get to the point of where like you guys are, where like it's just out there and I'm not worrying about printing this damn thing.
It'll be done, right? It's almost
Yeah.
done.
Oh, I mean, it's just printers and everything are locked down, and
Yeah.
it's just. So,
That's the whole thing.
Hisky H asked, "How do you approach character sheets if you lay out them as well? How do you balance?" Oh, okay. So let's just start out with that. How do you approach character sheets?
They should be as simple as possible. There should be enough room to write the thing that you want to write. So you have to actually try making a character, I feel, when you're making them. I made a lot of mistakes previously when I'm like, okay, this looks nice, and then when I actually sit down and play it, it's like, oh, I can't fit these things here, or
Yes.
oh, there's room for like this much equipment, but I have a ton of stuff. Like, where do I put this? So just make sure to play test it as much as you can. Make one fancy version and one printer friendly version and offer that for free download, because you can't just print all these colors, and the black ink and everything will destroy people's printers. So make a minimal version as well, and make it just, I don't know, small, so it doesn't fit. I mean, make it A5. A5 is my favorite if the system allows it. Otherwise, A4 or US letter, I think, is the maximum size to me. There are some games that has like several pages worth of character sheets. I don't mess with that. I know people like it, but I would never touch that because I get too distracted and like lose focus of all these things. So keep it short. Also, I just come to think of it, if you can add some like rules and like reminders of rules on the character sheet. So like we did in Murkbar, for example, we have the rules for what omens are like, what you can use them for, or how does the rule for spellcasting works. Like, you as a player, you don't have to flip through a rule book for that as well. You can just look at the character sheet and it will say, remind you of what this rule is like. So
yeah,
I think that's nice.
Yeah, I guess kind of adding on to that, I started really trying to focus in on like form fillable because I mean the worst the worst thing in the world for me with like 5e's character sheet was that Wizards of the Coast never really did a great form fillable version. And with like very basic knowledge of JavaScript, they basically could have made like D&D Beyond in a PDF, and they just like never quite did. Plus like resolving some of the math of that system in a character. And
do that if you can. I think a great character sheet to look at is, of course, Mothership, who does like the flowchart thing. When you can create your character, you can just follow along on the character sheet where you should go next. So, really good dashboard design. Excellent.
The last one we got is another. It's the final part of Hiskies here. How do you balance product identity versus readability versus usability?
Big question.
Yeah, that's a.
Ah,
I feel like that's
it's
a constant struggle. Like,
it is. Yeah, it
yeah,
is. I want it to look. I mean, if we talk Monokbori specifically, I guess I want it to look like Monokbori, but that sort of comes automatically when I do it, and I'm in that sort of headspace. And then usability and like what was it? Like aesthetics or style? What was it?
So it was
Product.
readability.
Yeah.
Yeah, product identity versus readability versus usability. I think usability and
Yeah.
readability kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah. Same thing.
Like that's
I
like
feel
just
like
accessibility, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. If it's a thing that is like it's going to be used, that has to be the most important thing, like usability and accessibility, and then style can sort of get attached to that. But I don't know. The product identity is also like under. It's not as high up on the priority as accessibility and usability. I feel like it should be there, but I mean, when you're at the table, you don't care if it has the logo on it or not, like something like that. You know what game you play.
Right.
You will like the smallest details in the design can communicate the game and the setting and everything, and like just make the lines a bit crooked and add some splatter to the side, and you get it. But I'm still thinking about like character sheets here, but it has to be able to you have to be able to use it. You have to be able to understand it, and same with adventures, and same with everything that you have to use at the table. But yeah,
Yeah, and
important stuff.
I do think that we're seeing this like sort of move back towards. Well, I say back towards. Um, I feel like, especially after last year and the whole OGL mess, that like um, as people were sort of looking out and like into other systems,
Mm.
I think once people started actually experimenting with some of these more like rules like quote unquote,
Yeah,
it's really starting to latch on because there's plenty of people I'm seeing now that after checking out either like Merkborg, Shadow Dark, or
yeah,
I mean Into the Odd, they're feeling like a bit of a burden seeing a character sheet these days where it seems like this feature is 4 paragraphs of text
yeah.
that I have to read to do a main thing, right? Whereas like you guys were just like, um, whenever you stab someone, they bleed more profusely, or I don't
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
just
No, I mean, plenty of games have just one word, and that's something for you to sort of riff on and be like, okay,
yeah,
I am, I don't know. Yeah, I got this thing. It has this word, and so look, what do I build from that? Like some of the, is it like Mace Rats who has like a magic system that's just 2 words you add
yes,
together, and
yeah.
it's like like that sort of thing. Like yeah. But what was I thinking? Ah, lost it. Wasn't important.
Well, Johan, hey, thank you so
Yeah.
much for joining me on this. Man, I guess where can everybody find you? Is there anything you're currently working on? Like, look, yeah, give me a plug.
So yeah, you can find me on Twitter, unfortunately, and also Instagram. I'm Art by Noor, and any like social media channel you can find Mörkborg if you're interested in that sort of thing. I recently got into doing this full time, so I'm releasing a big ass coffee table art book with all my stuff in it. So it's gonna be available for purchase soon. I actually have one here. It's
Oh,
a
hell yeah.
big boy. Look at this thing. So this chunky boy is like 230 pages, almost 400 pieces of art, and it's a thing that you can buy. So soon. And that's it, I guess. Yeah, I'm just keep on trucking. I'm gonna keep working and doing stuff. So I'm far from done with this thing.
Well, hell yeah, man.
Mm.
Well,
This
and
was great
yeah,
fun, by the way. Yeah.
oh, yeah, like I really
Yeah.
love this jam so far. I mean, there's been a lot of people that have been like, I learned a lot from this, and so I definitely want to do this again in the future. But yeah,
Yeah.
man, anytime, I'd love to have you back.
Yeah,
Especially
that
just
was
like
fun.
talking layout stuff. I swear I can just like geek out on this all day. But
I appreciate
anyways,
it. Yeah.
well, I know it's getting dark over there for you. Well, I guess it's always dark over there. But
It is. It is. Yeah. No, it's getting late here as well. So absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Alright.
Well, to everybody, hey, thank you all so much. To everyone that's in the jam, we have, I guess I'll announce it again, because of the storms and everything, screwing up so much of the stuff here in the U.S. Deadline is pushed back one day. So get those submissions in, and with that, if there's any questions, hit me up on Discord. Johan, thank you so much for being here, and everybody, we will see you later.